Right, so here we are, talking about all manner of things, and actually poor Jane, who is horribly sick in Stellenbosch, or in Cape Town, although that's her story and she's sticking to it, but I mean, I was saying to the guys, I think anybody from the Western Cape is like, Joburg? I'm not going to Joburg. I'm sick, I'm really, really, really sick. I mean, especially at this time of year when we're so desperate for the rain. So, she's not here, but in between the title of the session going out and today, she was talking a little bit more about some of the feedback that she's been getting from this community, which I think is a lovely one, about, it's as much about equipping a C-suite as it is, frankly, about equipping L&D people to be able to do this. And I'm going to deliberately use the word equipping rather than empowering, because I was doing a session yesterday and somebody said, yes, we need to empower our people. And I said, I absolutely disagree with that. And you could see them. I said, because I actually think that people have power. They're born with power. They wake up in the morning with power and they go to work, and there are processes and there are systems and there are rules and there are regulations and there are people who strip that power away, who squash it, who kill it, and sometimes kill the will to live as well, frankly. So this idea that we've got to empower people, no, take away all the nonsense, especially and including at the C-suite, that takes away the power in daily ways that become weekly ways, that become monthly, become yearly, become sometimes people's whole flipping career, which is why we've got the level of disengagement that we have all around the world. Who was here at my other session? Was there anybody here? Yeah. Okay, well, good. Then if you weren't here last year, I'm going to share a stat. It's the stat I share often, because it's the stat that guides all the work that I do, albeit in multiple different forms. It's the concept of flow. My high chick sent my high. Yeah, try spelling that one. Yeah, so the concept of flow is about this idea of, when you're in something and you're just loving it and you lose track of time. That's flow. And I mean, ideally it happens at work, but it can happen when you're exercising, it can happen when you're doing something you love, a hobby, whatever, work, reading. So he came up with the concept of flow, which is one that's become quite commonly understood and commonly spoken about. His research, 80% of adults, 80% of us, even if we were to become financially independent so that we did not need to work, we sell a really successful business, we make a brilliant investment, we win the lottery, whatever it is, even if we didn't need to work, we would still want to work. Which is, for me, why this tragedy of the unemployment in this country, what it does to people for generations, they will never get a chance to do that, because they're not just unemployed, they're unemployable. But it's too early for me to start crying, so I won't. But the point is, 80% of us want to work. We want to contribute skills, to be part of something that matters. And yet this is the result of the Gartner's Global Engagement Survey. So you might be thinking, oh, well, that's not that bad. Okay, well, 80% of us want to work. 79% of us are engaged at work, because it's an engagement survey. And sadly, this is the number of people who are disengaged. Disengaged. Either passively, so like as a friend of mine says, the wheel is turning, but the hamster's dead. They're just going to work. And it's like, okay. Because I have to pay the bills, or I've got golden handcuffs and I can't afford to leave, so I'll just spend my way out of it with my bonus and try to be happier. Or I'm paying all kinds of black tax, or whatever it is. Passively or actively disengaged. They actually come to work to sabotage what's going on, to undermine what's going on. I mean, talk about biting the hand that feeds you. But you don't do that unless you are either psychopathic, which is possible but rare, or you are deeply, deeply frustrated. Deeply, deeply overwhelmed at how much is disempowering you when you've actually got a whole bunch of power that you'd love to contribute, and a whole bunch of discretionary energy that you'd love somebody to use. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, my first executive position was when I was 29. I mean, I would not have hired me. How that board hired me, I don't know. But the good news is I grew into the role. And since then, I've only ever had executive positions. And my proudest moments, not just as a manager, as a leader, but as a human being, has been when I see people come back to themselves. And I just watch them like, what the hell happened there? I mean, and this is not just cupcakes and kisses all the time. Because yes, I have fired people as well. It's like, I'm sorry, but you need to find your happiness elsewhere. And and you get to that point where, if you can't change the people and you have tried everything, performance management, coaching, support, or if you can't change the people, well, now you need to change the people. So yes, I've done that. But those moments when I've seen people exceed anything that they thought was possible, because finally that power is coming back, and finally that power is being switched on and being tapped into. I mean, don't tell me management isn't a noble profession. It's flipping fabulous when you see and you can make that happen by stripping away all that stuff. And so management, leadership, I mean, I think these things are fascinating. And then what Jane said was, absolutely, let's focus on the C-suite, but let's focus on you guys as well, as the conduits, hopefully, for a lot of this learning, a lot of this insight. Or not, because, L&D, yeah. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk about, you'll see, is actually less about the top of the food chain and more about you guys. And so if that's not what you want, well, sorry, they didn't change the invitation after she and I decided this. You're here under false pretenses, or maybe we would have gotten even more people if we had. But we thought actually that's more useful. For you as a community, how do you guys get this right? So, one of the questions she was saying you guys were asking was this idea of empathy along with execution. Is this old news in organizations nowadays? Or is this old news to L&D, but still needs to be understood at the top? And so I'm interested to hear your responses. And hopefully you guys, can you see it at the back? Okay. So, interesting graph came out about 2 years ago from the Harvard Business Review. And you can see absolutely the demand for social skills in leadership. So this is not a nice, faffy, feel-good thing that HR is talking about. This is a demand in terms of leadership, in terms of the ability to actually make things happen. And when I say faffy demand from HR, I'm not demeaning HR, okay? What I'm trying to amplify is the way that HR and learning and development can very easily be dismissed. Oh, it's them going on again about their stuff. Oh, that seems to have struck a chord. Perhaps you know what I'm talking about based on that verbal affirmation. So, I mean, do you think this is something that still has to penetrate the C-suites of organizations? Penetrate learning and development and how you guys are showing up in the content that you are providing, in the importance that you're attaching to this content, yes or no? Do you guys get it and nobody else, or does everybody get it? You just can't find the right answers. Yeah, I mean, there is that reality. What you're doing speaks so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying. So what you're telling me is what we need is human-centered leadership. When I look at my KPIs, which is what you are measuring and rewarding me for, I'm looking, they're not here. So it's not irrational to take my cue. In fact, it's highly rational. This is what you're saying, but this is how you're paying me. Okay, I'll take my lead from that. So yes. And of course, KPIs are not like the rising of the sun and the rises in the east, sets in the west, and we will all die. These things we cannot change. KPIs are not those things. They can be changed. They have been changed in companies. What do we actually want? And is that resonating through everything we look for, measure, and enable, or is there dissonance? And guess what? People listen to where they get paid. I mean, this is part of HR's role, surely. If not HR's, I don't know whose. But, okay, so thank you. Here's another thought. Hopefully, you can read that, I'm sure. As I said, I love my own opinions. Give everyone a chance to read it. Well, we don't. Well, we do, but we don't realize that. I had this conversation exactly yesterday. Well, this exact conversation yesterday with somebody saying to me, look, it's really difficult to be the only one because the culture requires this, rewards this, and so when you kind of step out from the herd, it's a risk, and especially when no one's backing and supporting you. I said, I absolutely agree. We all understand this. And just help me understand, you're a member of the executive committee. And so none of us like to be called managers. Oh no, because we're leaders. We're all leading. Because that's how you justify what you pay me. And leading sounds so much more impressive than I'm a manager. Managers are the boring guys, the leaders are the ones. And I said, so I totally get you. I mean, how can I not? But what part of leading do you not understand here? And he was lovely. I mean, and so he really, and we'd built up we have a strong relationship. But how many times I hear this idea that I can't because nobody else gets it. I can't because the culture doesn't allow it. I can't because it's risky. Well, that's the point. You wouldn't need leadership if it weren't hard, if it weren't risky, if it weren't countercultural. I mean, that's the whole definition of leadership. You lead. You take a risk because you think it's the right thing to do. You're convinced it's the right thing to do. Not a mindless risk, not an uninformed risk, but you go first. I've got a beautiful stone from a friend of mine who died 2 years ago from her garden. Her brother gave it to me. Do not go where the path may lead. Go where there is no path and leave a trail. No, I'm not saying rip up the scaffolding of your life. I'm not saying, take career-limiting risks every day of your career. It'll probably be a very short career. But at some point, when do you actually lead? Not just get paid to lead. Not get all the benefits of leadership. Not get the title of leadership. And when does the action happen? Rather than the updating of LinkedIn on your position. I'm glad you laugh, because it is funny, but it's also, it drives me demented. And it makes me want to weep, because we sit here with this wasted potential around the world of the 79% and 80%. And leadership is not the be-all and end-all of everything, but for heaven's sake, it casts a very long shadow. And it enables and disables a ton. And so the share options, the titles, the executive getaways, those are all there. And these are all your due. But the leading, it's hard, man. No. So, what I want to do is to help you guys think about your own leadership. And I love your point around leading upwards. I love that. Influence, making things happen. I'm going to get to that. And, I speak about it sometimes when I do stuff on office politics, how much and how many of us want a great leader, want a great manager. Well, what defines a great manager? What defines a great leader? Come, give me an idea. I mean, great managers and leaders that you've worked for are working for. What do they do? What do they not do? Well, at the Reserve Bank, we always used to have to call people, the governors, governor. You never called them by their first name. So, yes, I think those kinds of cultures are gone. But all of these things, relatable, empathetic, listening, back you, want to see you succeed, in your corner. Yes, I want that. Be a good manager, be a good leader. How many times do we not give that upwards? I'm on your side. I want to see you succeed. I will give you feedback because I care about the result enough to summon up the courage to give you difficult feedback. No, I want it, but I must give it. I can give it. And I think also we're so nervous about being seen to be ingratiating and brown-nosing that we don't support upwards, much less manage upwards, And so how this should be a reciprocal relationship. And so I love that. Go forth and freaking conquer. And look like $1 million while you do it as well. That's a great outfit. And how we all do this, though, or don't do it, because we're the center of the freaking universe. the center of the universe. No, I'm an L&D person, so, this is what I do. If your only tool is a hammer, every problem is a nail. So L&D, I'm coming at it from this expertise, or I'm coming at it from finance, we don't see the whole. We don't see the bigger picture. We don't see our role. I was doing this with a group the other day. I asked each of them, this was a very senior C-suite group, what's your job? I'm the head of finance for Africa. Okay. What's your job? I'm the head of HR for the Middle East. Okay. What's your job? I'm the head of regulatory and compliance. Stopped after 3, and after 3 I said, actually, I'm very sorry, I could keep going and asking everyone in the room this question, and you will all get it wrong. You could see them. I said, because it's a trick question, right? I've asked you what your job is, so you give me your job, but you give me your title. You give me your role. Your job in this company is to make this company succeed. That is your job. And I mean, of course, we've all got millions of jobs in life. To be a decent human being, to be a decent citizen, to be a decent parent, a friend, whatever. We've got multiple jobs. But in this company, your job is to make it succeed. And yet, you are so focused on your role, you don't see the whole. I've done my job. I've met my KPIs. We are the center of our own universe. Again, welcome to being human, but it doesn't exactly help fix the problem. So I want to take you through an exercise in empathy. And this comes from Stanford's Design Thinking Lab. It has been, in my experience, and with a couple of times that I've used it, profoundly powerful. I used it a while ago for OMO. They wanted to take OMO into rural areas of South Africa. And I was chair of the board of an ECD NGO, so childhood play matters, okay? On all kinds of levels, psychosocial, motor skills, cognitive skills. Kids need to play. Playing is learning when you are a child. And actually it doesn't change that much when you're an adult. So OMO had this great idea, decent people, cooked up in the offices of Umhlanga, saying we're going to really push OMO as a means for kids to be able to play, because parents, teachers, whatever, the kids will play, they'll get dirty, but OMO will get those stains out. I took them through an empathy exercise for 45 minutes. What is it like to be a rural teacher? In schools with potentially no running water, no electricity. What is it like to be the parent of kids who've got one school uniform that has been on lay-by for a year before they got it? What is it like for them? And are you sure that more OMO is solving their problems and that they will be able to believe you? 45 minutes later, they rethought that whole campaign. Yeah, let me walk in their shoes. You said it. Let me walk in their shoes just for 45 minutes, just as an intellectual exercise. We didn't even leave Umhlanga. I mean, I think if they had, then even more so, this would have made an impression. So this is what I want you guys to do. I want you to think about the C-suites that you are serving, and if you're not working directly at the C-suite level, the clients that you are here to serve, the people in your organization that your role is to help in a job of making that company succeed. So you can go and do this separately for yourself, to just think about it in your particular context. But given that there's multiple contexts at this table, this is a great opportunity for you guys to get to know each other, to have some conversations. So use this as an opportunity to shift from that, just for a few minutes, to walk in the shoes of the people that you are actually there to help. I love that idea. I've used that idea for the longest time. And I amplified it. Remember, here I'm specifically talking about the people you serve. So not your employees, not necessarily managing upwards. Who are your clients in your role at L&D? So I want you to think about it from that perspective. But to answer your question, I was on a panel discussion the other day with the woman who's the deputy coach of the Proteas, the netball team. Now, I mean, I did not do netball at school. I used to look at it and think, what's this like random hold the ball, stand. Like, move, do something. But, I mean, she was very passionate about netball. In fact, she was the head of the Marty's netball team, and she got them to university champions 3 years in a row or something. Never happened in the history of Stellenbosch. It was a big deal. She was lovely. And she said something which I then built on. And I said, you know, this idea of a leader as a coach. I mean, the metaphors of leadership are multiple. I love the idea of a leader as a gardener. I'm a very keen gardener. I don't make my plants grow. I create the conditions where the hydrangeas will be hydrangeas and the most beautiful hydrangeas they can be because I've given them everything they need. And the aloe is something different, and the aero lily is something different, and the camellia is something different. They do it. I just make damn sure that they've got the best place and space to do it in. And when there's weeds, I take them out very quickly because they're going to kill everything. So, I mean, you can make all kinds of metaphorical extensions about a leader as a gardener, but leader as a coach. I mean, let's use Rassie and the Springboks because don't we all just love them? Man, like, you know, there's just so much in this country you want to scream about. And then those oaks you just want to hug. I mean, you'd probably only reach their knees, but you just want to hug them. I mean, let's think about something that we can all relate to, that we are all proud of in this country. I hope. You know, there maybe are still some people whose team is ABSA, anything but South Africa. I heard that on the radio. I nearly crashed my car. I'm like, I understand that in the old days, but no. Anyway, moving on. I mean, how would it be on any level possible or sensible that Rassie says to the Springboks 6 months after this Freedom Cup, you know, Oaks, you guys could have won that second match in Cape Town if you'd just done this. What? But that's the equivalent of what we do with 6 monthly annual performance reviews. And how much of our performance review is looking backwards rather than looking forwards? Spotify's got a great performance evaluation system, and it's a feed-forward system. 10% what has happened, 20% what's going on now, 70% what's going to need to happen going forward. We spend all our time in a performance review, if we have it, if it's honest, once a year, looking backwards. Well, thanks for nothing. And you're giving me feedback about something that happened 6 months ago. I could have spent the last 6 months getting better at it. You know, and so all of these, a leader as a coach, a colleague as a coach, an employee as a coach, I think it has enormous power if we really internalize it rather than just use it as the latest nice-sounding thing from HR speak, you know. So yes, I violently agree, in other words. Any other thoughts or questions? So with that, what I want to help you guys with as well is, as you grapple with the complexity of your role, your job, your part of the organization, your world, your life outside of work, all of these things, in a world of overwhelm and demand. My favorite cartoon of all time is from the New Yorker, about 8 years ago now, I think. Two people are walking along a pavement. So clearly it's not in Joburg because, you know, there's a pavement. So two people are walking along a pavement, and the one is looking at the other and saying, my desire to be well informed is currently at odds with my desire to remain sane. Yes. So we live in a time, and it's not going to get any better, ever, of overwhelm, of complexity. Whatever we call it, VUCA, BANI, whatever. I mean, this is just welcome to life in the 21st century in an emerging market country with all kinds of catastrophes in the world and on this planet. And when we deal with complexity, or even think we're trying to, there are 5 leadership mind traps that we will fall into by virtue of being human, by virtue of actually being unable to deal with complexity, and that your clients, your leaders, your colleagues are falling into. And it comes from the work of Jennifer Garvey-Berger. She has her PhD in adult learning from Harvard and has done a lot of coaching. And she distilled these 5 leadership mind traps that I find incredibly helpful, again, starting with myself, but in engaging with other people. You will fall into them. You cannot not. But at least if you can recognize them, you can try to get yourself out of them and start to understand complexity in its fullness rather than from the trap that you're in. So the first trap is the one of simple stories, single stories. I'm right, they're wrong. This is good, that's bad. I'm good at my job, they're useless. I'm being strategic, they're being political. And whatever it is. Why do you think I wore this dress? Did I wear a blue dress? Did I wear an orange dress? Single stories, simple stories. How many people have watched the Chimamanda Adichie TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story? I mean, come now. That woman. Every time I went to Lagos, I thought, why can't I bump into her? I never did. If you haven't watched it, spend 20 minutes of your life watching it. It's one of the top 5 TED Talks for a reason. The danger of a single story. The problem with stereotypes, as she says, is not that they're wrong, but they're incomplete. Simple stories reduce. And so she invites us, Jennifer Garvey Berger, when we see that we are in that trap, to ask the question, what other stories might there be? What other stories might there be? Even if you find them impossible to believe, what other story might there be going on here? And particularly in difficult relationships, difficult stakeholders, how is this person, who I want to throttle, how is this person a hero in their story? No, he's a schmuck. No, he's not telling himself he's a schmuck. He's telling himself he's a hero. Why? And by that, I don't mean condone what they're doing. I don't mean accept it. I mean, how might you build a bridge of empathy and toughness to get to a solution and an outcome that matters? Again, way easier said than done. But at the very least, recognizing the trap and try to get yourself out of it. Because this is the truism of life and humanity. We judge ourselves by our intentions. We judge others by their actions. So beautiful jacket lady, what's your name?
Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you. Sorry, I don't have my glasses. Rebecca. She gave me a bit of a look, which I couldn't see at the back of the room, so I'm making this up. She gave me a bit of a look when I asked her to move.
No.
I just, I can just see she's one of those people. But when I came in and I gave somebody else a bit of a look, no, but I'm a very nice person. You just have no idea about the morning I had. I don't care. Don't tell me about your morning. I can just see it. No. So, with other people, their failings are dispositional. It's a function of their character. With us, it's situational. No. If you were having to deal with what I was having to deal with, you also wouldn't have been very nice this morning. Fundamental attribution error. We all do it. The second trap, rightness. How addictive it is to be right. To need to be right. To be absolutely convinced you are right. Right, can anybody not relate to that? Small, embarrassed, take back time. And actually, what's interesting about rightness is that we only feel all of those things and multiples of those and many other things besides. We only feel those things when we know that we're wrong. When we know that we're wrong. Until we know that we're wrong, we're not wrong because I can feel it. I'm right. And so how this trap of needing to be right and being convinced I'm right is a trap. And I think particularly the more senior we get, I don't think leadership helps on so many levels because I think leadership makes you stupid. And I mean this with all due respect. It makes you stupid. Because you become more senior, surrounded by more people who want to tell you what you want to hear, and more convinced that, not everyone gets to this position, and so I get here because I know what I'm doing. And you do, but not always, about everything, especially in a world of complexity. And so, my metaphor is, as people become more senior, they move from being scouts. Scouts in the army are doing reconnaissance work. They're going out to check the territory to see what's going on, to learn, to understand what does this look like. I went from being, on more than a few occasions, I'm sure, we go from being scouts who are out to discover, to being soldiers. And what does a soldier do? A soldier finds a position, digs themselves in, and defends it, even if as if their life depends on it, because sometimes it does. And so this is not just an opinion. This is not just something I think. No, this is me. This is my whole ego is tied up in being right. Again, welcome to being human. So in the face of complexity, what do I believe? There are very few things that we know. Most of it is, what do I believe? How could I be wrong? And you guys were having a long conversation. How do I listen to learn? I am the expert. You have paid me to be the expert. I have trained to be the expert. You want to know what I think? I'm telling you. Great, but you're not learning either. You're not listening to understand what the problem is that you're needing to solve. You're coming in with your answer because you're the expert. And how many of you guys have read Amy Edmondson's book, The Right Kind of Wrong? Won the FT McKinsey Business Book of the Year award last year. I gave it to a CEO that I know. She was rolling her eyes about psychological safety until she read that book. Like, oh, okay, hold on a second. There's a lot more to this. It's an excellent book. And what she talks about is the difference between simple failures, which are mistakes. 1 + 1 is clearly not 3. Accidents like the Titanic, and she talks about the Swiss cheese effect. So the holes in Emmentaler Swiss cheese, they're kind of distributed through the cheese. When they all line up, you've got an accident where it's going to happen. So that's a complex failure. But intelligent failures, these are discoveries. When you are dealing with the unknown and the new, you will have to have intelligent failures. But this is not just a cognitive thing. I mean, this changes our whole identity when our role as a leader is not to fail, to not allow failure, to not to be seen to be failing, to not to be wrong. Well, let's just understand the difference between these 3 failures. Simple failures, complex failures, negligence, carelessness. Well, of course that is a problem. Of course there have got to be repercussions. But an intelligent failure is completely unpreventable. So who wants to take a stab at why I said the one is avoidable, but not preventable, and the other one is preventable? You can, you should, you better damn well do your best to prevent accidents and mistakes. The only way you are going to prevent discoveries is by never even trying. You're fine, stay where you are. You can avoid them, but once you start, you will never prevent them, and that is the point, is to have them so that you are failing intelligently. The right kind of wrong that she speaks about. How many of you guys are in environments where you hear the phrase, let's take this offline? This is my screensaver expression, and we'll take it offline. Yes. Yeah, so is that reasonable, less reasonable, functional? And so instead of disagreeing in the meeting, getting the best ideas, and then committing, even if it's not your idea, but you've been heard and you've said what you think, we all agree, and then the committing just doesn't go anywhere. Disagree and then commit. And so, frankly, in the space of complexity, where you just want to feel like you're standing on something, agreement is very seductive. Okay, all right, we're all in it together and we all know what we're doing. But it can often be an illusion, especially if you remember the reality that when everyone is agreeing, someone is not thinking in the face of complexity. Okay, 1 + 1, we don't need to have a disagreement that the answer is 2. Let's move on. But with something new, novel, complex, everyone is agreeing, someone is not thinking. And how are we when the temptation is to have the agreement because it feels safe and it feels nice and it's easier? How are we recognizing that it can often be a trap? And so particularly with difficult relationships, with getting feedback, with asking for feedback. How can this person who maybe disagrees with me, who doesn't like what I'm doing, how can they have those opinions and still potentially be right? I'm not saying lose all shred of self-confidence and all shreds of self-identity, but what are you open to in terms of disagreement, in terms of dissonance, in terms of what you don't know? Speaking of which, I saw this the other day in one of Adam Grant's books. Oh, and I love that man. So the disagreement, the feedback. I loved his model where he talks about when we take feedback from someone, we've got to be really sure that they meet 3 criteria. And then care, credibility, familiarity. When they are giving me feedback, do they care about me or care about what we are here to do? They don't have to care about me personally, but do they care about the task at hand? Are they credible? Do they know what they're talking about the subject? Are they familiar with what's going on or with me? And I thought that this was genius because I've said for years, I don't take criticism from somebody I wouldn't take advice from. I won't. I mean, I'll take advice from a lot of people, but I won't take criticism from you if I wouldn't take your advice. Why? Because intuitively, I thought, well, something's missing here. Because what happens if I care and I'm credible? I mean, I know what I'm talking about, but I don't know you from a bar of soap. What? This is not a rhetorical question. What happens? What is the risk of happening? What is at risk of happening? You can cause offense, but also it may not apply to you, right? So you're right. What's your name? Bernard. So I'm right, but I don't know you, Bernard. So what I'm saying might not apply to you because I don't know you well enough, right? I'm sorry that I'm looking like a little scrunchy owl. What happens if I know what I'm talking about, I know you, but I don't actually care about you or the task? Come guys, this is not a difficult question. You're learning and development. It might be sabotage, it might be all kinds of undermining. I don't have your best interest at heart. Exactly. So fine, you know what you're talking about, but I'll take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. 100%. I know you. I care about you deeply. But I don't actually know about the issue, the task at hand. I'm not credible with this particular problem or issue or whatever. What happens then? Care and familiarity, but no credibility. Yeah, it's lovely. It's warm and fuzzy, but you don't actually know what you're talking about. So thank you. Yeah, conversation's redundant. Like my mother. God bless her. My mother thinks I run the universe. She also thinks I don't lie, which drives my other sisters bananas. Bananas. I made the mistake when I was at the Reserve Bank of telling her that my department that I ran had gotten the healthiest, highest score in the culture survey ever in the history of the Reserve Bank. We really were flying. And these people that had been given up on were coming back to life, and people from all over the bank wanted to work with us because we were doing such fabulous things. My mother, God bless her, Michelle Anderson Boyd, goes on Facebook and posts that her daughter was the only head of department at the Reserve Bank to get a clean audit. I'm like, never! Take that down right now. I think she's still offended. It was 10 years ago. So that's gold. That's gold when you've got all 3. 2 out of the 3, 1 out of 3, even less so. Oh, isn't control an illusion? And an understandable, seductive one. And again, I'm not talking about simple things, right? I could control what I put on this morning. I could control whether I brush my teeth or not. I mean, the list is endless. You can control whether you take a child's hand when they cross the road. I'm talking about control in the face of complexity, which we are all dealing with, and those of your stakeholders that you're trying to influence are dealing with. Who plays chess here? Or who has a child who plays chess? Okay. You play or your child plays? Okay, what's the child's name? Malachi. Do you know how chess works?
Yes.
Okay. So Malachi's got a big tournament coming up, and you sit down with him and you say, okay, my boy, you're going to play this chess game against whatever kid. Now, I've got a plan for you. There's going to be your first move, and then there's going to be your next move, and then there's going to be your next move. And then you give him, 25 moves, and then he's won the game. These are the combinations for a game of chess, which has, I don't play chess, 50, 60 squares. It's only got so many pieces, it's got very clear rules, those pieces can only move in certain ways. Almost 200,000 combinations for the first two moves. One move, another move, on a little square with rules. The number is just too huge. And yet, we love to think, we hope desperately that in a world, in an organization that is way bigger than this, with way more going on, and no rules, that we can control things. We can't control, we can only influence. In the face of complexity, I'm not saying we can't control anything, I'm saying in the face of complexity, you can influence. You have to influence. You influence through tough empathy. You think you are controlling when all you've got is the toughness. Where do I want things to go? The last mind trap is around ego. Yeah, I see a few smiles again. I love Rye's smiles. I don't know what she's talking about, ego. Yes. When you are in the trap of ego, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I do it, and it serves me really well, and it has served me really well. You know, that Marshall Goldsmith great insight of what got you here won't get you there. Well, what got you here won't keep you here either. So who do you want to be next? And often people, the feedback I get is, no, but I can't do this, I don't want to do this because it's not authentic. I mean, hands up, who prizes authenticity as a value? Who thinks that authenticity is important to them? Yeah, most of us, right? I want to be who I am. I want to be able to show it and see it, and what you see is what you get, and I want to be able to express it rather than living behind a mask. How did she say it? The woman who spoke about emotional labor. People spend their lives behind a mask and inhabit their lives at low volume. Yeah, something like that. I mean, who wants that? And yet, Erminia Ibarra at London Business School writes about the authenticity paradox. So what she says is how many times when it comes to real learning and development, not just training, real adaptive change, you know, where we're not just adding more apps to the phone, but we're doing a system upgrade. How many times people step back as, oh, that doesn't feel authentic. That's not who I am. Well, guess what? You're right. It's not who you are. It's not who you are. Until you keep going, and it becomes who you are. And so how many times we take this feeling of inauthenticity as a sign that we shouldn't be doing this, as opposed to the complete opposite. It's a sign that you are moving towards something you want to become. Again, this assumes you want to become that. If you don't, run like hell, because you're turning into a version of yourself you don't want to be. And that can be very scary. But if this is something you want to do, is something you want to be, is something that matters, well, then inauthenticity is the clearest sign that you're making progress until you become consciously or unconsciously competent, right? This is who I am. Now, so grab your paper. I want to ask you something. Grab the piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. And on the left-hand side, I want you to please complete the sentence, I am. And I'm not talking about demographics. Okay, I'm white, I'm black, I'm male, I'm female, I'm whatever, I'm 50, I'm 20. I'm talking about characteristics and qualities, particularly around leadership, particularly around the stuff we've spoken, around empathy, around toughness, around managing upwards, whatever it is. I am good at listening. I am bad at listening. I am courageous. I'm patient. I am insightful. I am impatient. Whatever it is. And you're not going to share this, so be as honest with yourself as you want to be. And then on the other side, I want you to complete, I'm not. Generally, these are things you want to be. You know, it's not, I am not a murderer. Well, that's fabulous. I am not great at listening. I am not able to manage upwards. I am not able to bring my empathy to work, whatever it is. And then for all of those words, you don't have to write this down, but I invite you to just look at them, read them, and to add the word yet to every single one of them. You are not yet able to do that, be that, show that, give that. You're not yet. So who do you want to be next? Because we are all works in progress who mistakenly think we're finished. We're not. Which is both the good news and the bad news, I suppose. So with that, I'm going to finish up. I do a lot of work at Cambridge, and this is a chap at Cambridge, this idea that to be truly radical in a world of overwhelm and collapse is to make hope possible, not despair convincing. And I am not talking about toxic positivity. I mean, toxic positivity is toxic. I'm talking about hope. I want you to read this, please, and we'll go through it. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives, will determine the careers of the many people that you are responsible for and to. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. And if we remember those times and places, though, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live now, to lead now, to do your job now, as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. It's from Howard Zinn, a historian. So you don't just, this isn't just something you've got to do in your job, it's something you get to do. Something you get to do. I hope you do it well. I hope you do it with empathy, but with tough empathy. There's, I think, a lot counting. There's a lot of people counting on you. There's a lot riding on L&D getting things right. So thank you.